Senator Johnson.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. Director Pompeo, thank you for your past service. I also want to thank you and your family for your willingness to serve in this capacity. It is a sacrifice. As you were walking by me, I mentioned that I've read a lot of testimony for nominees, and this written testimony is probably as good as I've seen, so anybody interested in this nomination should really read it. One of the reasons I liked it is I could see the concepts required for effective management in it. And of course, you're going to be in charge of managing relationships, but the concepts I'm talking about are, well, in your conclusion, the areas of agreement. That's how you accomplish things, concentrating on the shared purposes, shared goals. Obviously, in your handling of the CIA, you had a strategy on how you're going to manage that prioritization of tasks. So as I ask these questions, I want you keeping those concepts in mind. In managing your relationship with almost all nations, there's an economic relationship and there's a security relationship. Obviously, you're not Secretary of Commerce, you're not the U.S. Trade Representative, you're the Secretary of State. You're concerned, obviously, about security, but our negotiations in terms of trade are going to have a great effect. I joined Steve Daines' delegation to China, and I was struck by what they were primarily concerned about was the Taiwan Travel Act. We thought we were going to hear all kinds of things about tariffs, and they were most concerned about that core area of their interest, and don't meddle with that. But I just want you to comment on how are you going to deal with that conflict between the trade relationship and the security relationship. And the reason I'm pointing out with China is we were there, we also crossed into the DMZ, we were in the Blue House, walked into North Korea, and from my standpoint, talking about priorities, our number one priority with China, the relationship with China, is to get them to continue, and they are effectively enforcing those sanctions so that we can bring to a conclusion the dismantlement of the North Korean threat. So can you speak to that conflict between trade, economic relationship, and security relationship?
Senator, it's complex. At times they're conflicting. At times they are actually additive. That is, they work together. If you can achieve a good economic outcome with a partner country, you can get assistance in other places on a diplomatic matter that you care about deeply, or on a military matter, place that you want them to assist the United States. So there's places that good diplomacy can lead to making those not in conflict, not zero-sum alternatives where you have to sacrifice an economic relationship for a security relationship. How do you do that? You build that team. The State Department has an enormous, the Undersecretary E, right, has an enormous economic team that, in my judgment, from what I can see over an extended period of time, has not been able to deliver as much value as some of the other parts of the economic apparatus of the United States government. I am intent on finding the right people to make sure that we have the tools so that we can make a full-throated, a broad effort across all elements of the diplomatic spectrum. And where it comes into conflict with security issues, I suppose it's highly factual and contextual, but the idea, and certainly we've seen this with the issues with China today, we thought through the risks, we identified relative priorities and attempted to level set them, and then engaged in diplomatic activity such that the challenges that have been presented to China through the actions that have been taken by this administration over the past weeks didn't upset the apple cart with the good work that the Chinese have done helping us on the North Korea challenge.
So do you agree with me that in our relationship with China, our top priority is their cooperation on North Korea?
It is.
I mean, currently?
It is. Today, that's the #1 priority for this administration, and I agree with that.
Would you agree that in terms of the best way to bring China into full compliance with all the trade agreements, that working with our other trading partners, having a good relationship with them and having us as an alliance, working with China and make sure that they actually follow the rules, would that also be probably the best way of achieving that?
I do believe that, Senator.
What do you think? Yeah, I went over to China. I really wanted to hear their perspective. What do you think their primary goal is? What is their strategy? What are they trying to achieve?
Senator,
and let me just say that the three things they listed to us: bring 1 billion people out of poverty, improve their environment, and avoid a financial crisis. Those are their 3 top priorities that they told us.
Senator, I've heard similar things. I've actually, in my interactions, have heard the economic crisis listed first. That is, they have this challenge of leverage inside of China today. They've got to wind their way out of, and they've got to do it through economic growth. That was their priority. That has the secondary benefit that you described of bringing the next several hundred million people into middle-class China. When I've spoken with them, those were their two fundamental priorities.
So they have enormous challenges. So I guess one of my points being is, rather than look at our relationship with China as a win-lose situation, it sure makes an awful lot of sense to me is try and redefine that and try and obtain a win-win situation. Would you agree with that?
Senator, I would agree that in most situations in the world, with a handful of exceptions, there are opportunities to not make the negotiation, the diplomacy, a zero-sum game. And with respect to China in particular, I know that's true.
So to quickly switch to Russia, I think it's a historic tragedy that Putin has taken this path. Can you describe in your words, what path has he taken? What is Russia's aims?
I'll take Vladimir Putin at his word that the greatest failure of the 20th century was the dissolution of the Soviet Union. I think he believes that in his heart. I think you see his actions follow from that, attempts to regain power through and to maintain his power and maintain his popularity through activity taking place outside by poking America, to maintain his not only capability, an enormous nuclear arsenal, but also his desire to be perceived as such, as being perceived as a superpower. So I think each of the actions you take are to undermine democracy in the West, such that the Soviet model, the now Russian model, is the one that is painted to the world as the one that will lead the world to greatness. We know that's not true, and we can't let that happen.
So to prevent that from happening, we need to be fully engaged, particularly in Europe, but anywhere where Russia is pushing and being aggressive. For example, in the Balkans. I've been over to Serbia, Kosovo a number of times. I think they're at a hinge point. I want to encourage you. I think Assistant Secretary Mitchell's done a great job of certainly encouraging all of us to pay attention so that they decide to continue to look to the West because Russia offers them nothing. Can you just quick comment?
Senator, I agree. I would add to that, when you say everywhere, I would add to locations we see them being adventuresome as Latin America as well. So I agree. We need to push back in each place that we confront them, and by every vector, cyber, economic, each of those tools that Vladimir Putin is using. We need to do our best to make sure that he doesn't succeed in what we believe his ultimate goal is.
Again, thank you for your willingness to serve.